Nothing bites colder than the silence of a house that used to know your name. Not the November wind cutting across the Willamette River. Not the wet concrete of Portland's Burnside Bridge at 6 in the morning. Not even the quiet that settles over a funeral goes home. Maya Calloway was 20 years old, standing in the driveway of the craftsman house she grew up in. Single rusted iron key in her palm. Behind her, the front door had just been locked from the inside. She heard the deadbolt turn. She heard her stepmother's heels click back down the hallway. She heard nothing after that. 3 hours ago, she had buried her father. Now she was standing in the rain with $43 in her bank account and a key to something she didn't understand how. That morning, Maya had sat in the study of the Burnside Heights house, the one her father, Thomas Calloway, had spent 11 years restoring from a rotting shell, across from a lawyer she'd never met, watching her future get rewritten on paper that smelled like fresh ink and bad intentions. Thomas had died of a cardiac event 4 days prior. He was 56, no prior diagnosis, no warning. The paramedics found him collapsed next to his at 7 in the morning, his wife of 4 years. Renata Voss Calloway had met them at the hospital. Maya had been called an hour later, still in her barista apron. Renata was not a warm woman. She wore her composure the way other people wear jewelry, deliberately as an accessory. She had come into Thomas's life at a preservation fundraiser and been exactly what a lonely widower mistakes for a partner. Maya had never trusted her. Not from the first dinner, where Renata rearranged the table setting. Not from the afternoon she found her reading Thomas's client files with the study door almost closed. Thomas thought Maya was being protective. He thought she'd come around. He was wrong. Underring, the lawyer's name was Preston Mead. Maya had never seen him before the day of the funeral. Her father's actual attorney was a woman named Carol who wore reading glasses on a beaded chain and had drafted Thomas's original will 7 years ago, the one that left everything to Maya. Preston Mead had a different document. He slid it across the mahogany desk with 2 fingers. The amendment had been signed 6 weeks before Thomas died. It revoked the original provisions entirely. The house, the Contrus in Calarangua Singh's historic restorations, the liquid holding, the investment accounts, everything now passed solely to Renata Voss Calloway. The signature's wrong, Maya said. Her voice didn't shake. She was surprised by that. My dad was left-handed. He wrote with a very specific backward slant. That's not his notarized, Preston said. He was already closing his briefcase. I don't care if it's notarized. That's not how he signed his name. Renata was standing near the window, watching the rain. She didn't turn around. You're welcome to contest it in probate, Preston said. Though I'd think carefully about the cost of that process, given you her bank account balance. She clocked that immediately. He'd looked her up. Renata finally turned. I need you out by tonight, Maya. I have a stager coming tomorrow. You're selling the house. The market is favorable. She crossed to the side table, picked up a small cedar box and set it in Maya's hands without looking at her face. He was asking for it in the ambulance. Take it. Maya looked down at the box. Tarnished hinges, small brass clasp, small brass. Pack 1 bag. Clothes only. The bus shelter on Burnside smelled like wet newspaper with her duffel bag, between her feet and the cedar box, in her lap. She opened it. No cash. No letter. No photograph. Just a key. Heavy. The way cast iron is heavy, dense and cold and indifferent to the weight you're already carrying. Old, the kind of old that belongs to a building with stone arches and a wooden door 3 inches thick. The bow was crusted with rust so thick it had gone from reddish-brown at the edges to almost black at the shank. She turned it over. Her shoulder, under a flake of corrosion she scratched away with her thumbnail, was an engraving, small but deliberate, a mountain peak with a fir tree on either side. 3 letters pressed deep into the iron, CRB below the letters, a number 3. Her father had asked for this in the ambulance. Whatever was happening to him, whatever he already knew, this was what he wanted in her hands. Thomas Calloway did not ask for random objects while he was dying. He was the kind of man who researched the exact species of fir appropriate for a porch ceiling in a 1920s bungalow before ordering lumber. Maya put the key in her coat pocket and started walking. She checked into the Cascade Budget Inn off Northeast Sandy Boulevard. 2 nights, then nothing. a radiator that clanked every 20 minutes. She sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the key. CRB. Her father knew Portland's built environment the way a cardiologist knows an institutional. Something in the city's old meant something infrastructure. Thomas would have known what it was. Maya opened her laptop. She spent 4 hours on it. Kartik Regional Bank. Dissolved 90D. No vault. Craftsman's Reserve Building. A condos. Intbenispiro. Condos now. Built in 2006 on the footprint of something older. She kept circling back to that last one. The building torn down for the condos was a stone structure from 1893, built to house the Pacific Northwest Founders Trust, a private wealth management concern, serving the region's oldest lumber and railroad families. The Founders Trust had been absorbed in 1967 by another institution, the Columbia Reserve Bank. It still existed. One branch, no ATMs, no advertising. An address in the Pearl District, in a building on the National Register of Historic Places. No website, just a single line in an old Oregon Business Journal directory, Columbia Reserve Bank, Est. 19 Institutional Services, 1929, by appointment only. The crest in the listing, a mountain peak flanked by 2 fir trees, matched the key. Maya set an alarm for 7 in the morning. The Columbia Reserve Bank occupied the ground building on Northwest 13th Avenue, between a wine bar and an architectural salvage shop. The only exterior signage was a bronze plaque beside the door. Inside, the lobby was paneled in old-growth fir, tight-grained and honeygold, nothing like modern construction. The teller counter was sottosnut, worn smooth at the edges. The floor was original hexagonal tile, black and white. In a pattern Maya recognized from a building her father, a woman behind the counter looked up. Name tag, Diane. Expression, I don't know who you are, and I'd like to keep it that way. Can I help you? I need to speak with someone about a vault, Maya said. Vault 3. Diane's smile didn't change, but something behind it did. We don't discuss vault services with walk-in visitors. The server counter. Maya set it on the counter. Diane looked at it the way you look at something unexpected that hasn't moved yet. I'm going to have to ask you to wait, she said, and disappeared through a side door. The man who came out was somewhere in his late 60s, with close-cropped grey hair and the kind of comes from decades of being in rooms where things mattered. His suit was dark blue, not quite navy. His name tag read, Warren Okafor, branch director. He looked at Maya. He looked at the key on the counter. He picked it up, carefully, the way you'd handle something that might crumble, and turned it over. When he saw the engraving on the shoulder of the key, all the composure he'd walked out with went somewhere else entirely. He set the key down when not steady. His hands, Maya noticed. When pass, he asked. His voice had dropped to something closest to a whisper. 4 days ago. Warren stood still for a long moment. Then something in him seemed to arrive at a decision. Not louder, but different in a way that made the teller straighten up. Lock the front doors. Activate the blackout protocol. No calls in or Diane. She reached under the counter without another word. Warren turned to Maya. His eyes were steady again, but there was something behind them she couldn't read. Grief, maybe, or the particular weight of a promise kept for a very long time. I need to take you somewhere, he said. It's going to require my personal authorization at every level, 3 of them. Are you ready to go? Maya looked at the rusty key on the marble counter. She picked it up. Yes, she said. Come with me then. We have a long way to go down. The stairwell was behind a door that looked like wall paneling, until Warren pressed a specific point on the chair rail, and the stairs were concrete, narrow, lit by wire-caged bulbs. The air changed immediately, cooler, carrying old stone and machine oil and time. Your father wasn't just a client, Warren said as they descended. He was an archivist. The Columbia Reserve Bank was founded by 6 families. Timber, shipping, railroad. They accumulated things over a century that were never meant to appear in any public record. When Portland began its preservation initiatives, Thomas's firm was hired to retrofit the structural systems of these old buildings. What nobody knew is that the subterranean infrastructure he was maintaining wasn't just architectural. He was the keeper of what's down to landing. A titanium vault door, modern, biometric panel and keypad. Warren entered a sequence and pressed his thumb to the reader. It hissed open. 3 years ago, Thomas came to me. He said his health was declining in ways his physician couldn't explain. He suspected he wasn't going to have as much time as he'd planned. He transferred everything out of standard banking that summer and restructured his holdings. He left nothing accessible to anyone without this. The room beyond was enormous. Vaulted brick ceiling, iron sconces, worn limestone floor. Vault doors lined both curved walls, each numbered in cast iron. Renata came in 2 days ago, Warren said. She had the forged will and a letter from Preston Mead claiming authority over Thomas's accounts. Did you give her anything? Warren looked at her. Every vault at Columbia Reserve requires a physical key, a recorded voice authorization, and directorial verification. She had none of these at the end of the corridor. Vault 3 was different. The door was older, blackened iron, riveted at the seam, hinged with hardware that looked like it had been forged before the First World War. No panel, no keypad, just a keyhole at fault, Warren said. Purely mechanical, no electronic components. No power dependency, nothing that can be remotely accessed or hacked. He based the locking system on an 1890s design he found in a decommissioned building in Astoria. He stepped back. There is one key in existence. Maya looked at the iron door, then at her hand. He hid it in the water supply line of the guest bath, Warren said, something close to a smile touching the edge of his voice. Behind the access panel inside the wall. He said Renata would never look there. She didn't like plumbing. The key went into the lock the way something goes into the place it was made for. Not smoothly, not easily, but correctly. She felt the tumblers engage through the iron and turned. The sound was slow, deliberate. Each tumbler dropped with a resonant thud she felt in her chest. The door slid sideways into the wall, dragging silence apart as it went. Maya stepped through the door. She stopped walking almost immediately. Not a cold storage chamber, not bare concrete. It was long and low-ceilinged, lit by warm amber strips running along the base of the walls. And the first thing she saw, the thing that hit her before anything else registered, were the coins. They were arranged on a series of built-in oak shelves that ran the entire left wall, floor to ceiling. Not loose, not scattered, but laid flat in custom-fitted trays lined with dark green felt. Each coin visible from next, each one visible and deliberate. Double eagle gold coins. $20 pieces minted between 1883 and 1932. The kind that stopped being produced when the country went off the gold standard, hundreds of them. Their surfaces caught the amber light and threw it back, warm and steady. The way firelight moves. Maya walked toward the shelves slowly. She picked up one coin. It was heavier than she expected. The face of Liberty on the obs was worn at the edges from age, but clear at the center. The date beneath it read 1926. She set it down carefully and kept looking. Below the coin trays, locked glass front cases held rolls of historic gold certificates, federal currency from before 1930 gold, paper instruments backed by physical gold, some of them still in their original bank wrappers. Beside the certificates, a row of rectangular ingots, each one stamped with a refinery mark and a weight. Small but dense, the kind of weight that doesn't announce itself until you try to move it. Thomas Calloway had spent 30 years restoring buildings that other people had given up on. He had been paid well for it, and he had apparently trusted none of that money to any institution that Rinsata could reach. Warren had followed her. He stood near the door, watching her face. He began moving assets here 8 years ago, Warren said. Long before Renata, he didn't trust digital holdings. He'd watched too many families lose everything when institutions failed. He wanted something real, something that couldn't be touched from a server somewhere. Maya turned and looked at the right wall. There were the filing cabinets, dark walnut, floor to ceiling, the way she'd imagined. A drafting table at the center, its glass surface lit from below, covered in architectural drawings annotated in Thomas's careful left-leaning hand. And on top of the drafting table, centered and waiting, a manila folder with one word on the tab, Renata. Maya sat down. She opened it. The first page was a Cayman Islands bank statement. An account opened 7 years ago. The Preserve Thomas and Razor. The deposits followed a pattern. Small at first, then larger, accelerating sharply 18 months into the marriage. The second page was a toxicology analysis from a private lab in Spokane. Thomas had mailed his own blood samples. The results identified a cardiac glycoside compound consistent with prolonged low-dose digitalis exposure, a substance that, given in small amounts over time, produces symptoms that read on any standard examination as progressive heart failure. The third page was a land deed for the corner lots beneath the Burnside Heights house, cross-referenced against a development proposal from a company called Meridian Pacific Development Group, a 31-story mixed-use tower. The footprint required 9 demolitions. All 9 structures were historic. All 9 carried landmark protections that Thomas had personally fought for over 8 years. Renata had held a silent partnership stake in Meridian Pacific since before the fundraiser, where she met Thomas. She hadn't married him. She'd acquired him. Under the folder was a composition notebook with a rubber band around it. She pulled the band off. You one-page the box, the bank, and Warren. That means you didn't stop. I knew you wouldn't. The habit of looking. That's yours. I gave it to you when you were 8 and you spotted the wrong molding in the upstairs hallway. The gold on the left wall is yours outright. Warren has the transfer documentation. The certificates are liquid. Saffites. The coins are individually catalogued. Combined, they represent everything I earned, didn't find. That she couldn't find. Is your case. The notebook has account numbers, lab contacts, and the name of a detective, Roland Fitch. He's been building a parallel file for 4 months. I'm sorry I kept this from you. I was afraid that if she knew I was watching, she'd move faster. I ran out of time anyway. Take care of the city. It remembers the digital drive was clipped to the back cover. Maya plugged it into the drafting table's port. A wall monitor flickered on, mirrored backup of the Callaway Historic Restoration server, and a live access feed. Renata had logged in that morning. But the provenance documentation for every Burnside Heights structure, the chain of custody records, digits that anchored it building's landmark status. Without those records, the designations became contestable. Without the designations, demolition permits could move. 90 seconds. Then she triggered the audit log Thomas had embedded months earlier. Every deletion, every access, every IP address, and forwarded it to the Oregon Historic Preservation Office, the Portland Bureau of Development Services, and Detective Roland Fitch. She sat back, on the shelves behind her. 147 gold coins held the light the way things hold light, when they've been waiting a long time to be found. 3 weeks later, Renata still hadn't been told the floor was giving way. She'd retained 2 attorneys, filed a countersuit in probate court, given a podcast interview about modernizing Portland's house, appeared before the City Planning Commission in a dark green coat, advocating for Meridian Pacific, with the calm of someone who believes they've already won. The annual Portland Architectural Heritage Dinner was at the Crystal Ballroom on West Burnside, restored dance hall, plaster ceilings, original fir floors. One of the first buildings Thomas had ever worked on. Renata arrived with Preston Mead and worked the room. Maya was already there. Ivory silk dress, her mother from a storage box Renata had never known existed. Warren Okafor was in the room. Detective Roland Fitch was in the room. Assistant District Attorney Patricia Hensley, who had spent 19 days with the toxicology report and offshore records. 2 plainclothes officers near the bar. The evening's host called Renata to the podium just after 9. She took the microphone like someone who believed she had already won. It is my honor to announce that the Voss Callaway Family Trust will make a gift of $2.5 million to the Portland Heritage Fund, she said. In memory of my husband Thomas and his commitment to this city. She paused. Thomas would have wanted this city to grow. Maya stepped out from the mezzanine stairs. She didn't raise her voice. The room's acoustics carried her fine. That money is under a federal hold order, Renata. The room went the particular kind of quiet that happens when everyone realizes at once that something real is occurring. Renata turned, her expression held for 3 seconds. Then it didn't. You have no standing here. You're a barista. You have nothing. I have Vault 3, Maya said, and everything in it. Patricia Hensley moved through the crowd. The 2 officers followed. Renata Voss Callaway. You are under arrest for wire fraud, forgery of a testament document, embezzlement. And we are opening an investigation into the suspected poisoning death of Thomas Allen Callaway. Preston Mead went pale against a pillar. The microphone hit the podium with a hollow knock. Renata looked at Maya one, as the officers moved to either side. Maya didn't say anything. There was nothing left that the documents hadn't already said better. They took Renata out through a side exit. Warren appeared at Maya's shoulder. Your father would have liked the venue. He restored the plasterwork in this room, Maya said. 1998. He told me once that the original plasterer had hidden his initials in the cornice on the north wall. She looked up. I found them when I got here tonight. She picked up her coat. Outside, the November rain was still coming down on Burnside, on the stone buildings and narrow streets and craftsman houses her father had spent his life arguing were worth keeping. The key was in her pocket. Some things you don't put down.